2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. 4 principles of recovery that I learned from a 50-mile race. Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
What is going on, you guys? Tyler, your wandering therapist here today. I am alone, and that leaves me here today to talk with you guys about a few things. And I've been really contemplating some things that have happened over the last couple of weeks as a result of something that my wife ended up doing. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what I witnessed from her experience in a 50-mile race. But before we do that, I just want to touch base really quickly. We are still doing a drawing for our Rising Sun men's retreat that will happen in the fall. And the way that you can enter is if you go to therapybros.com and sign up to be a caller on this show. You can sign up for any date that's available, even if the dates are later on and they happen to be after whatever the retreat's going to be. We'll probably have the date set for that retreat in the next week or two, but it will be in the fall, usually towards the last week of September. But if you go and sign up to be a caller on this show, then you're automatically entered for the drawing that we're going to have on July 31st, which happens to be Brannon's birthday. And we'll draw from everyone who has signed up to be a caller, and we'll give 1 pass away. And if you happen to be a woman, you can give that pass to somebody else, but it'll be a pass that you can use at your discretion for whatever good you want to use it for. So therapybros.com. I know that some of the slots are really filled up now, but there are a few extra slots left, and you can sign up even later on down the road too, if you want to. So we're happy to be able to talk with you as our callers. It's like one of the best parts of my whole week is when we record this podcast and we get to have real people with real issues bring themselves on in a state of complete courage and share their stuff with everyone here listening. It's a true gift. And I hear it all the time that people really resonate with the callers that come on and go, oh, that could have been me, or oh, I so related to that, or oh, I'm so glad they did that because I was able to hear that and it changed some things for me. And we love our callers. We are so grateful that you guys are willing to come on and do that kind of stuff. So let's get into it today with this idea. I've been quoted before in the past with my own clients that I believe that if anybody trains for some kind of a big event, physical event, whether that's a triathlon or a long, trail run or a marathon or a half marathon, even down to a 5K, if I haven't been exercising at all, The process of training for and completing that event, I guarantee, will actually improve the quality of your recovery work. You can't help but have it improve your recovery work because of what it takes to actually set the intention, do the work, and then execute the plan to finish whatever it is that you set out to do. And I had that happen, but this time it was as an observer, as my wife trained for and completed a 50-mile race a couple of weeks ago. It was incredible. I still sometimes find myself contemplating the magnitude of what it means to go 50 miles in a single setting. And that's the kind of thing that as a Boy Scout, we would do a 50-miler and it would take us a whole week to hike 50 miles and backpacking, right? And this thing was done in a single day. And it's quite a feat, but what I learned there and what I had reinforced are some of the things that I wanted to share with you today as it relates to healing, recovery, and wholehearted living. And so let's jump into it. The first one, I'll talk about 4 principles that were re-emphasized, not just in my mind, but in my heart as I witnessed this happen. The first one is, principle number 1 is that when training for a big race like a 50-miler or finding success in the process of recovery, preparation matters. And what I mean by that is that, when you start working on whatever it is that you're wanting to work on, the healing from some betrayal or trying to overcome some trauma, or maybe you're trying to stop, an unhealthy pattern or behavior in your life, a lot of times we get into these realms where a podcast or a book or a therapist or a friend will start to teach all of these different principles and all of these different tools, and you start to want to add tools to your toolbox. And it seems that the tools that get added to the toolbox are only as good as a person's ability to develop them to the point that they can use them in the crisis moment or in the moment that they're needed. And what most people will do is they'll go to a class or they'll hear something and they'll be like, oh, that's a great tool. I should think about that in the future. But then they never use it until the moment when they need it. And then in the moment that they need it, if they're lucky, they think, oh, there was a tool that would have been really good to use in this moment, but I can't remember what it is. And then oftentimes it's in the aftermath that they go back and go, that was the tool I could have used there, which is fine. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. Normally, how we develop things is we kind of go through a process and pattern of learning where we get something in our mind in our heart that starts to click, and we go, oh, that makes sense. So we get the little bit of learning, and then the little bit of learning turns into something we call awkward application. And awkward application is the messy part. It's the part where I take the new thing that I've learned and I try to apply it to my life, but it's not quite smooth yet. It's hard. It's difficult. It sometimes feels wrong even. And most people will give up during the awkward application phase of learning. But those who will push through the awkward application part of learning will then actually start to develop a skill. It'll be a new skill, and then the more they use it, that skill will become habitual. And then it becomes a new habit that is used in place of whatever the old coping was. And that's how we learn. The challenge is to press through that awkward application until it becomes a new habit, a good habit. In the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, one of my favorite books, there's a principle in there that says, I will form good habits and become their slave. And that's the process that we're engaged in many ways, is that logistically in our lives, when we decide we want to change our lives and live a wholehearted way of life, we have to insert certain things into our lives that weren't there before. And we have to go through that discomfort. We have to be disciplined enough to follow through on it, and then they become new habits and skills. And that's something that I learned on this race. You don't train for a 50-miler without some level of discipline and consistency up front. And if you don't pay the price early, you will definitely pay the price on race day. And that I saw that happen with so many people. A couple of the runners that I talked to that were on the trail, that were really, really struggling, they would say things like, I really should have done better on my training. I see how important it was now that I didn't cheat on those, runs that I needed to take. The discipline to do the work when nobody's looking consistently over time really matters. Waking up early and hitting that trail when you could just sleep in an extra day. And it doesn't seem like it would be a big deal. Or getting into your dailies in recovery and deciding, I don't really need to worry about my dailies for a while. And then it's been not only 1 day, but 2 days, but 2 weeks, but 3 weeks. And then you wonder why you're relapsing. And it was the little things that weren't committed to consistently that were part of the fall, that were part of the pain. And the pain will either come through the little choice of discipline, which then leads to capability and freedom. So the pain is worth it. Or it will lead to convenience and comfort at the price when you really need it. So that was the first principle, is the preparation really, really matters. Think about the skills that you have in your own life right now, whether it's your daily charge, or working on your lines of defense, or reaching out to people and building a team, self-care, self-compassion, all of these things that are beautiful tools that fuel a heart that lives in peace and strength and confidence. It's easier to practice those things when it's not a crisis. Build them into your life early, commit to making them habits over time, knowing you won't be perfect at them, and then letting them carry you when you actually hit the time when you need it, when you actually hit race day. So, second principle here that was really been pressed on me, and I just got to witness it in so many ways, simple ways during this race, is that having a team and encouragement and support really matters. It really matters. And having simple things. I remember we were sitting, I think, about mile 26, and we had laid out some stuff for our runners. We had 5 or 6 runners that were kind of on the team that were running with my wife. And we'd found a little piece of shade and some rocks, and we laid out a bunch of fresh fruit, grapes and strawberries and pineapple and just anything we could with all of the medical stuff we had, the wraps and the cramping pills and everything else too. And there was one particular runner that wasn't a member of our team that just happened to come walking by after they got to their checkpoint. They were walking by, and you could see that they were just dragging. They were really, really struggling. And you could tell that they were feeling pretty downtrodden, all alone on this trail, And as they were walking by, we just said, "Hey, you're doing a great job." And then they kind of looked at us, and then we said, "Hey, you want some grapes or something? You want some fresh fruit?" And this person literally broke and started to well up with tears, with gratitude over just the gesture of offering a handful of grapes. And I was thinking about that as that runner then kind of lifted their spirits and took off down the trail again and continued to pace down the trail. And I was thinking about that and how that's applied in my own life in so many ways. Sometimes people don't even know they're doing it. Just the simplest gesture of kindness matters so much in a dark moment. And if you don't have a team, you're less likely to get that in the moments that you need them. I remember a few years ago in my own life, we were kind of going through a really tough time with some health stuff that was going on in our family, and just some chronic pain that didn't seem to be going away. There didn't seem to be any answers, and it was crushing. It was just crushing emotionally. And so I'm trying to hold everything together, go to work every day, make sure I'm covering everything that I need to make sure everything's in order and our family's taken care of. And I was just getting worn down. I was tired, and I was feeling really, really helpless and extremely discouraged. And I'm not the kind of person who does very well at reaching out for help. And so not many people, not even many of my friends, kind of knew what we were going through. But somehow somebody found out that we were kind of in a little bit of a rough space. And I drove into my driveway one night after a long day of work, and I sat in my car And I just was kind of turned off the car and I started to say a prayer because I was just so overwhelmed. And as I was saying this prayer, a car pulled up next to me, and it happened to be one of our neighbors, someone that I don't really talk to all that often, someone that's just friendly. We see each other on the streets when they're out walking, or, we talk to them at church here and there a little bit, and we were friendly, but not deep, deep friends. And they stopped, and I kind of like hurried and like tried to like wipe my eyes up and things. And she jumped out of the car and she opened up her passenger side door and she saw me in the car, and I got out, and she had a big smile on her face, and she just reached in and she pulled out these two big pans full of food from a local restaurant and handed them to me. And she just said, I heard that you guys might be having a rough time right now, and I just wanted you to know that I'm thinking about you and that you're on our mind. And then she handed me this thing of food for dinner for my family. I felt like that runner at mile 26. Like, eyes welled up with tears, complete gratitude, like just the balm of having somebody see. Yeah, the food was great, but the thoughtfulness and the support in a moment of struggle, in a moment of darkness, was like water in the desert. And I challenge you as you're listening to think about this in your own lives. Have there been times when you've been in the darkness when maybe somebody has been an angel in the weirdest, simplest kind of a way? A smile, a kind word, a meal, a text message, a thank you card in the mail. Like, whatever those things are, when they hit at the right moment, they are life altering. They are life giving. And I noticed that, and I witnessed that several times with several of the runners, that the smallest, kindest gesture was enough to then spur them to want to keep going when it felt like they were going to need to quit. Someone saying something like, hey, you're strong, you can do this. Someone offering a handful of grapes. Someone lifting their blanket. They had a blanket, and they at an aid station, and all they did was lift it over a different runner and provide shade for 2 minutes. And that was just enough for that runner to say, yeah, thank you. I can do this. I appreciate it. Total strangers in some cases. And that's something that I witnessed in this running community, is that they take care of each other. It's not as cutthroat as you would expect most sports to be. Maybe it is at the top, but most people are just travelers on their own path, willing to help other travelers on their own path. And I think if we approach our lives that way, there's a lot of value to it in being the person for someone else in a dark moment, but then being willing to accept those little tiny things that mean a lot when we're in our own darkness really matters. And so building a team is important, because if you're building a team, you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to receive the kind of support that you need in the moments that you really need them. And if you don't build that team, you're less likely to have that support in the moments that you need it. So, third principle here is, and this one I saw so many times inside of this race, and it's this concept, and I think it really, really applies to recovery. At least it's applied to my own personal recovery when I stopped to think about it, is that the human spirit has more depth and strength than we give it credit for. And when that human spirit gets unlocked, it is a force to be reckoned with. And I saw this in multiple runners, especially in my wife. There was a point in the race where, every runner kind of goes through these waves of physical feelings and emotional feelings when you run a race that long. I know I felt it when I ran my own marathon several years ago. At mile 17 to 18, I was feeling so good right up until mile 17 to 18. And then I hit a dip in my energy. And then there was a big hill that was like 2 miles long between 17 and 19 miles. And between the dip in my energy and that hill, it broke me emotionally. And I remember like running on the road there, just feeling shattered. And it wasn't just like, yeah, I'm tired physically and I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish the race. That was definitely going through my mind. But what that brokenness physically did is it pushed me into some places in my own emotions that I thought I had made peace with. It sent me back into some of my own caves to confront some of my own demons, to face my own feelings of worthiness or lack thereof, to have a wrestle with a higher power. And I remember as I was wrestling, going to these dark, dark places, that was where I had what I would consider one of my most spiritual moments. And it's where I felt the love of God enter my heart and give me a sense of peace, give me a sense of comfort and a sense of strength, that I was just loved, a complete sense and feeling of love. And once that feeling of love began to feel me, it shifted everything, and it made the rest of the race feel doable. It made me feel like not only was it doable, but I could actually pick myself back up and keep going and go with a level of strength that I didn't know that I had. And I saw this happen a couple of times with my own wife over the course of 50 miles, where she would be really, really excited and have good energy, and then something would wane and she'd have less. And it felt like it was like this wave that was slowly bringing down, 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 until eventually there was this down point where she didn't think she could complete the race. She didn't know if she'd be able to complete it. And she sat down. She was with my daughter and my son-in-law at the time at about mile 40. And she sat down and they got her close to a creek, and they took her shoes off and they put her feet in the creek, and they kind of sat with her for a minute, and she kind of had this emotional sort of like experience of breaking. And then my daughter sat next to her and just kind of was there to support her. My son-in-law did the same thing. And then after some time of letting that emotion move and letting that emotion pass and showing some support, my wife basically said, I'm faced with two choices. I either hike 2 miles back the way I came to an aid station, or I just keep moving forward, knowing that I probably still have 2 or 3 hours left of hiking / walking / running. And for whatever reason, something inside of her, after allowing that emotion to move, said, get up, keep moving. And she did, one step at a time. And it reminded me of a quote that I heard from somebody else. It was choice language, so I'm not going to repeat it here. But basically, it was someone who climbs mountains for a living. And his motto was, when you think you're done, he used a different language. When you think you're done, you're actually only 40% done. There are compartments inside of the human element that we let go untouched because we don't push ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to have the confrontation with those parts of ourselves that hold that dormant energy. And when we allow ourselves to actually go to those places, it alters us in an emotional way. And that's the principle that I really was reinforced with is that in recovery work, an emotionally corrective experience is worth far more than 100 of the mental only kinds of experiences. When you go to your places of darkness, when you feel like you're at the very bottom, you're actually just at a new beginning. And that's what recovery offers over and over and over again, is a cycle where you get a chance to work really hard, make some changes, feel some confidence, get some respite, and then that will inevitably bring you to a new target you need to work on. And that target will walk you down into a place of discomfort, a place of pain, a place of struggle. And if you navigate that struggle, you'll realize that you have far more in you than you thought you did, and you will unlock a new superpower. You will become a better person, and you will perpetually be in that motion of continued growing for as long as you submit yourself to those principles of recovery. And what I've witnessed in my practice, what I've felt in my own life, what I witnessed on that race, not just in my wife, but in many of the other runners, is that very principle that when somebody who I work with in my office somehow has an emotional experience and they realize that they are capable of doing something difficult, that they know that they can go through pain, that they can trust themselves to navigate that pain for the sake of learning and growth. And when that happens on a heart level, they're willing to do any of the hows. They're willing to do all the uncomfortable things like manage their dailies, set up their lines of defense where they actually need to be. They're willing to do the reaching out that they need to. They're willing to take care of themselves. They're willing to take a look at themselves. They're willing to go into places that things like EMDR and IFS will do to help you shift and grow, because the emotional experience is where they actually build the trust in self and trust in a higher power. And we are far more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And I witnessed that in so many different ways. The last principle that I just want to touch on today is one that is always near and dear to my own heart. It's one of my favorite things, maybe in the entire world, to witness, to be a part of, to try to engage in myself. But I love to witness when a person puts themselves wholeheartedly in the arena of whatever it is they're facing, whether it's their emotional struggles, whether it's a physical challenge, whether it's a race or a sporting event or some other goal that they're trying to accomplish. When somebody goes wholeheartedly into that arena, knowing that they could get obliterated, knowing that there's an entire possibility that they will not be able to hit the target that they set out to hit, and yet they fearlessly step into that. I love to witness that. I believe that that's what we were designed for as human beings. I believe that there's something deep inside of every single one of us that, whether we like to admit it or not, always wants to improve. It always wants to get better. And we can try to bury it. We can try to pretend it's not there. But deep inside of you, there is something that will always eventually rise to the surface that will make you want to engage in the process of getting better. And when you accept that that part of you is there and that it was never going away, and then when you start to lean towards that part, you start to listen to that part, you start to put yourself into areas and arenas that are uncomfortable for the sake of your own growth, that part will take you to places that you never thought possible in your life. That part will begin to teach you that there's a different way to look at life and there's a different way to win at life than many of us often think about when we think about trying to win. In this particular race, there was again, we were kind of at this mile 25, 26 station. Another runner came running by, and she was hurting. She was in a really bad way. And so we gave her some ibuprofen to try to help her out, and we gave her a couple of snacks. And then she went down the trail and turned. She was still in our view, and then she just stopped and started vomiting, and she just started throwing up. She couldn't keep anything down. So we ran down the trail to go see what she needed. She said she was fine. She thought she'd be okay. And then she said thank you, and we gave her some more medicine, and she took off down the trail. So she was ahead of our group. And then about a half hour later, our group got to the aid station. We helped them get set up, and then we started off down the trail. And I was helping to pace one of the other runners that was with my wife's group. And we were just pacing down the trail. It was probably about an 8-mile section between aid stations. And we got about 6 miles into that, and we caught up to the lady that we had tried to help. But now she was completely by herself on the trail. She was staggering because she was so weak and couldn't hardly move. She'd been throwing up for that entire 6 miles, so she was getting dehydrated. She couldn't move at all. And very well, she was taking steps like shuffling, like you'd see somebody who's using a walker to walk. She was taking steps that way just down the trail. And we came up on her, and stopped to see if we could help her. And I could tell that she was not in a very good way, but her mind was amazing. And she said, I started to get to know her and talk to her, and we were kind of shuffling along. I thought I might even have to carry her off the trail to the next aid station because she just couldn't hardly move. And we called for help and had the paramedics coming our direction to come and meet up with us. But as we were continuing to walk, she said, my heart wants to finish this race. My spirit wants to finish this race. She's only at mile, 32 by now. So there's like 18 more miles to go. And she said, but I have to accept that on this day today, with everything that my body is doing, this is success today. And she said, I know that I'm going to have to finish at this next aid station. I know I'm going to have to drop out of the race at this next aid station. Then she said, but today is just as successful as the 100-miler that I ran last year, that I completed. And she said, it's just as successful because I gave what I had today. I gave everything that I had today. I don't have anything else to give. And that really sat with me. That really sat with me because I believe that in recovery work and in life, we so often judge our success as the target that we set. And so many of us are so wrapped up in perfectionism. We're so wrapped up in needing to be the best or to hit the mark or to be perfect that we set the target so high that we inevitably almost always fall short of the target that we set. And then we feel like we've failed. We feel like we're not worthy. We feel like we're not good enough. And this experience was just reiterating to me that in recovery, if you shift the definition of winning and success, you have a chance to win even on a bad day. And the way that you win is through honesty with self and full purpose of heart. Willingness to get in the arena. Willingness to step in knowing that you might get obliterated today and to still give your very best, knowing that you may not hit the target you're set out to hit. I told this to some of my friends. Some of my clients hear this all the time. So those who are listening, I apologize, but I look at what I do for a living. I work in the realm of helping people overcome addictions to pornography, sexually compulsive behaviors, affairs. The pornography industry is well over $100 billion a year industry. I happen to be a drop in the bucket opposed to that industry. I pretty much am going to lose. In most cases, I'm going to lose the battle to the pornography industry when you look at it that way. It's like trying to surf a gigantic tidal wave, knowing that it's going to come and it's going to crash on the beach and it's going to consume people's lives. And yet, it makes me feel alive to grab the surfboard and go try to ride that wave. To go give everything to a good cause. And I love the quote by Vince Lombardi that I firmly believe that any man's finest hour, the culmination of all that he holds dear, is that moment when he has worked his heart out and lies exhausted on the field of battle victorious. It's the setting the intention towards good things and giving of everything that you have on that particular day that is the measuring stick of the winning and the losing. And when you do that day in and day out, some days you give 30% because that's what you have, and some days you give 80% because that's what you have, and some days you just happen to be on your game and you kill it and you're at 100% and you give it and that's what you have. It's the giving of your heart to that cause over and over again that transforms the nature of who you are. It transforms your very nature a little bit at a time, consistently over time. And that breeds success, especially when you can measure success in that way. It makes me think of a poem that many people have heard before, but I love this poem and I'm just going to share it with you today. It says, they all lined up so full of hope, each thought to win that race, or tie for first, or if not that, at least take second place. Their parents watched from off the side, each cheering for their son, and each boy hoped to show his folks that he would be the one. The whistle blew and off they flew like chariots of fire. To win, to be the hero there, was each young boy's desire. One boy in particular, whose dad was in the crowd, was running in the lead and thought, my dad will be so proud. But as he speeded down the field and crossed the shallow dip, a little boy who thought he'd win lost his step and slipped. Trying hard to catch himself, his arms flew every place, and midst the laughter of the crowds, he fell flat on his face. As he fell, his hope fell too. He couldn't win it now. Humiliated, he just wished to disappear somehow. But as he fell, his dad stood up and showed his anxious face, which to the boy so clearly said, get up and win that race. He rose quickly, no damage done, behind a bit, that's all, and ran with all his mind and might to make up for his fall. So anxious to restore himself, to catch up and to win, his mind went faster than his legs. He slipped and fell again. He wished that he had quit before with only one disgrace. I'm hopeless as a runner now. I shouldn't try to race. But through the laughing crowd, he searched and found his father's face with a steady look and said again, get up and win that race. So he jumped up to try again, 10 yards behind the last. If I'm to gain those yards, he thought, I've got to run real fast. Exceeding everything he had, he regained 8, then 10, but trying hard to catch the lead, he slipped and fell again. Defeat. He lay there silently, a tear dropped from his eye. There's no sense running anymore. 3 strikes, I'm out. Why try? I've lost, so what's the sense? He thought. I'll live with my disgrace. But then he thought about his dad, who soon he'd have to face. Get up, an echo sounded low. You haven't lost at all. For all you have to do to win is rise each time you fall. Get up, the echo urged him on. Get up and take your place. You were not meant for failure here. Get up and win that race. So up he rose to run once more, refusing to forfeit, and he resolved that win or lose, at least he wouldn't quit. So far behind the others now, the most he'd ever been, still he gave it all he had and ran like he could win. 3 times he'd fallen stumbling, 3 times he rose again. Too far behind to hope to win, he still ran to the end. They cheered another boy who crossed the line and won first place, head high and proud and happy. No falling, no disgrace. But when that fallen youngster crossed the line in last place, the crowd gave him a greater cheer for finishing the race. And even though he came in last and head bowed low, unproud, you would have thought he'd won that race to listen to the crowd. And to his dad, he sadly said, I didn't do so well. To me, you won, his father said. You rose each time you fell. And now when things seem dark and bleak and difficult to face, the memory of that little boy helps me in my own race. For all of life is like that race, with ups and downs and all. All you have to do to win is rise each time you fall. And when depression and despair shout loudly in my face, another voice within me says, get up and win that race. That is at the core of every pathway of healing. This journey is tough. This journey kicks you around. This journey is discouraging. It's overwhelming. It often comes with bumps and bruises and stumbles and falls. And if we live thinking that we need to be perfect through the journey, we will never have the fortitude to actually do what it takes to win. Because winning includes falling and getting up every time you fall. And having a heart that won't quit. And measuring success by getting up every time you fall rather than being perfect in it all. Reminds me of a song called Fear by Blue October, and one of the lyrics that I love in that song is talking about his own recovery process. He says, I used to fall, now I get back up. It's that simple shift. accept your own humanity, trust your own strength, trust your own heart, trust that you have reserves inside of you that you didn't even know that you have, and that if you're willing to go to those dark places, you can unlock that energy. And when you fall, get back up. Get back up. Don't quit. Full purpose of heart, full effort. So I love this work because it taps into the most core human elements of this life. It's a good place to be. A life of recovery is the best kind of a life, even though it seems to be born from a place of pain for so many people. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If it's meaningful to you, if it's impactful to you, please feel free to share it with other people. And until next time, keep on keeping on.